Millionaire CEO gave 4 black cards to test 4 women. What the maid did left him in shock. Before the story begins, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Enjoy the story. When a millionaire CEO realizes he is surrounded by opportunists, he creates the most dangerous test of all: unlimited black cards. But sometimes the right person appears at the most unexpected moment. The rain tapped against the glass of the Mercer mansion like impatient fingers, creating a rhythm that perfectly matched Julian's mood. Seattle was gray outside, but not as gray as his last few months. At 32, he had discovered a bitter truth. When you have enough money to buy a small town, it's impossible to know who truly cares about you. The previous week had been the final straw. Dinner at the Four Seasons with his ex-girlfriend, Serena, who spent 2 hours talking about their special connection, while taking selfies with his helicopter in the background. "We had something unique, Julian," she had whispered, but her eyes sparkled more when he mentioned the trip to Paris than when he said he missed her. "Mr. Mercer?" A gentle voice pulled him back to the present. "The guests have arrived." Julian looked at Chloe Adams standing at the living room door, holding a crystal tray with champagne glasses. She had only been there for a month, but she had already become the only good part of his days. Not because she was especially efficient, she broke a cup every week. Not because she was quiet, she had opinions about everything, from his coffee to the morning news. It was because she treated him like a person. Last week, when he was in a terrible mood after a board meeting, she had said, "Mr. Mercer, the coffee is ready, but it's as bitter as your mood. Should I redo them both?" Anyone else would have stayed silent or tried to flatter him. She offered better coffee. "Send them in, Chloe, and thank you." She blinked, surprised by the gratitude, and smiled in that way that made the corners of her eyes crinkle a little. "You're welcome. Just try not to scare them too much, okay? They're already nervous outside." The 3 women entered as if they were walking down a runway. Serena Blake, his ex-girlfriend, glided across the room in a dress that cost more than a car. Harper Collins, his assistant, checked her reflection in the mirror before sitting down. And Vivian Cross, a wealthy friend, sighed dramatically as if being there was some great favor. "Julian, darling," Serena purred, kissing the air near his cheek. "You look terrible. Are you sleeping well?" Harper adjusted her platinum blonde hair and said with a polished smile, "With that crazy schedule of yours, you need someone by your side who truly takes care of your well-being." The tone seemed caring, but Julian noticed how carefully she measured each word, as if presenting a resume instead of worrying about him. Vivian just rolled her eyes. "May I know why we're here? You were very mysterious on the phone." Julian watched the 3 women settle onto the Italian leather sofa like 3 cats who had found a bowl of milk. All beautiful, all intelligent, all with their own reasons for being there. And none of them had asked how he was, not really. "I want to thank you for being part of my life, and I'd like to do that by giving you a gift." Chloe appeared quietly to serve champagne, moving carefully so as not to interrupt. Julian noticed how she bit her lip when concentrating, trying to balance the heavy tray. "What kind of gift?" Serena asked, her eyes fixed on the case. Julian opened it, revealing 3 black cards that gleamed like dark mirrors. "Unlimited credit cards, 30 days. You can spend whatever you want, however you want." The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain and the discreet ticking of the wall clock. "Julian, this is generous," Harper breathed, already taking the card carefully. "This is madness," Vivian muttered, but stretched out her hand anyway. Serena simply smiled. "I always knew you were brilliant." That was when Chloe stumbled. Not much, just a small misstep while moving around the coffee table, but enough to make the champagne wobble dangerously on the tray. "Oh my God," Serena scoffed. "Watch out for my dress. This Valentino cost more than she probably makes in a whole year." "Julian," Harper said with that condescending smile he hated, "maybe you should invest in training for your staff. It's embarrassing." "At least does she know the difference between champagne and wine?" Vivian added with a cruel laugh. "Or does she only know how to clean toilets?" Julian felt something burn in his chest. A clean, sharp anger he hadn't felt in a long time. Chloe had stopped moving, still holding the tray, her cheeks flushed. But instead of lowering her head, she lifted her chin and said, "I do know the difference. One is fermented with elegance, the other is what you're drinking now." Julian's jaw nearly dropped. Serena was speechless. Harper blinked several times as if she had been slapped. And Vivian? Vivian simply laughed. "This girl has courage," she said. "I like her." But Julian was hardly listening. He was looking at Chloe, who kept her chin raised despite the redness in her cheeks, and suddenly everything became clear. The other three women had entered the room looking for what they could gain. Chloe was there trying to do her job with dignity, even while being humiliated. "I want you to know that I value each of you." His voice was steady, controlled. "This is just a gesture of gratitude." He took 3 cards and handed one to each of them. Serena grabbed hers as if it were a trophy. Harper examined her card with professional interest. Vivian only shook her head, but slipped the card into her purse. Then Julian did something he hadn't even planned. He pulled his wallet from the inside pocket of his blazer and took out his own personal black card. "Chloe," he said, holding it out to her, "this one is mine. Now it's yours." The tray almost slipped from her hands. "Mr. Mercer, I can't accept this." "Why not?" Because I work for you. And because I haven't done anything to deserve it." "Exactly," he said, and for the first time in weeks, he felt like smiling. "You haven't done anything to deserve it. You didn't flatter me. You didn't pretend to be someone you're not. You didn't lie about your feelings. You just were yourself." Chloe looked at the card as if it were radioactive. "If I accept this and buy, I don't know, 300 hot dogs, will you fire me?" The question was so unexpected and so typically Chloe that Julian actually laughed. 300 hot dogs? "It was the first ridiculous example that came to mind," she said, shrugging. "That's how my mind works. Sorry. Don't apologize. And no, I won't fire you for buying 300 hot dogs. In fact, now I'm curious about what you do with 300 hot dogs." Serena cleared her throat loudly. "Julian, this is ridiculous. She's your employee." "She is someone I trust," he corrected, without taking his eyes off Chloe. Chloe finally took the card, holding it between 2 fingers as if it were a wounded butterfly. 30 days, 30 days. Do whatever your heart tells you. And if my heart tells me to do something foolish, then do something foolish, but do it being yourself." Julian's phone vibrated. A notification from the bank app, spending monitoring activated, 3 cards in use. He had set up the system the night before, certain that only Serena, Harper, and Vivian would take part. When he handed his personal card to Chloe, he quickly entered a command in the app. The screen confirmed, 4 cards in use. Now she was also part of the secret game that only he and Elliot knew about. The next hours passed in a blur of tense conversations and heavy looks. Serena left first, muttering something about strategic shopping. Harper followed, already making calls to personal shoppers. Vivian was the last, stopping at the door to say, "Julian, I hope you know what you're doing, because this is going to turn into a circus." "Maybe that's exactly what I need," he replied. When they were alone, Chloe was still standing in the middle of the room, looking at the card as if it weighed something. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Why did you really do this?" Julian looked away, walked to the window, and watched the rain falling on the lit garden. "Because you were the only person who served me champagne without trying to impress me. The only one who told me my mood was bitter without being afraid of losing her job. The only one who looked at 3 cruel women and still kept her dignity." Chloe smiled slightly, almost embarrassed. "And you thought that deserved a black card?" "I thought it deserved respect." She held the card carefully and left. Silence filled the room. Later, in the office, Julian poured himself a whiskey. Elliot entered quietly. "Sir, it's late. Do you want me to close the curtains?" "No." Julian kept his eyes on the wet glass. "Elliot, these cards aren't gifts. They're a test." The butler raised his eyebrows, unsurprised. "A test of what?" "Of character. I'm tired of not knowing who sees me as a man and who only sees my bank account." Before Elliot could answer, the phone vibrated. A notification appeared on the screen. "Purchase authorized, 347.50, Joe's Corner Market, Capitol Hill." Julian opened the app. The card he had given Chloe had already been used. The shopping list left him puzzled. 20 bags of rice, blue poster paint, disposable diapers, educational toys, and exactly 300 hot dogs. He leaned back in the chair, laughing to himself. 300 hot dogs. She really bought 300 hot dogs. Outside, the rain didn't let up. But for the first time in a long while, Julian Mercer was looking forward to tomorrow. Because something told him that Chloe Adams was about to show him a world no amount of money could buy. While 3 women turned black cards into an ego competition, one housekeeper proved that true luxury has no price. And Julian Mercer was about to discover the real meaning of the word investment. The next morning dawned with Seattle dressed in gray, as always. In the penthouse of Mercer Tower, Julian was having coffee while Elliot organized the morning reports. The butler, discreet as a shadow, slid the tablet across the table. "The card activities, sir?" Julian almost choked on his coffee when he saw the first notification. Serena Blake had rented a private helicopter for $15,000. The reason? Fashion entrance at the Nordstrom flagship. Her Instagram photo showed a radiant smile as she stepped off the aircraft in the middle of Fifth Avenue. "Seriously?" Julian muttered. "A helicopter to go shopping?" The second notification was from HarperCollins. Exclusive personal stylist, executive image consulting, and a full wardrobe boardroom level. $22,000 in one morning. She had posted on LinkedIn, "Investing in my professional future. Executive style, power dressing." "At least she tries to justify it," Elliot commented, adjusting his glasses. Vivian Cross wasn't left behind. VIP reservation of a rooftop at the Space Needle, private sommelier, and a collection of rare wines for an event with social columnists. $30,000 for an afternoon. Her Instagram story showed crystal glasses against the Seattle sky, cultivating important relationships, wine lovers, Seattle elite. Julian shook his head. 3 spend to be seen, he said, more to himself than to Elliot. And the 4th? As if on cue, a new notification appeared. Chloe Adams, more purchases at Joe's Corner Market. This time, powdered milk, children's vitamins, school supplies, and ice cream. Lots of ice cream. "Sir," Elliot said, pointing to a photo that had just arrived by email. "Miss Adams asked to send you this." The image showed a delivery truck parked in front of a modest building in Lake City. On the side, a simple sign, "Lake City Children's Home." Boxes and more boxes were being unloaded by smiling volunteers. Julian zoomed in and saw Chloe in the middle of the bustle, wearing a t-shirt stained with blue paint and a smile that lit up the picture. She was painting a wall with the kids, using the same poster paint she had bought the night before. "An orphanage," Julian said softly. She bought 300 hot dogs for an orphanage. His phone buzzed with a message from Chloe. "Mr. Mercer, I hope you don't mind the different delivery address. The kids' party was a bit dull, so I decided to upgrade the menu. If anyone asks, say it's a minimalist apocalypse edition buffet C." Julian laughed to himself. Even by text, she managed to be funny. Elliot moved closer to the window. "If I may observe, sir, it seems you found something interesting." "Interesting is a small word," Julian replied, still staring at the photo. At that moment, Serena's Instagram updated with a live video. She was in the helicopter again, this time flying over the city. "Guys, look at this amazing view. Julian always said I deserve to fly high, and now I'm literally doing it." Julian muted his phone. "She's making it sound like we decided this together." Harper posted a photo in a fitting room mirror, wearing clothes that cost more than some people's yearly salary. The caption read, "When you work with important people, you need to dress the part. Worth it investment pieces." Vivian was streaming live from her Space Needle event. "Friends, today I'm gathering influential people from Seattle to discuss the future of our city. The wine is just a detail." The camera showed well-known business leaders and local politicians. Julian closed the app. All 3 were turning the cards into shows for social media. Every purchase was a performance, every expense a chance to be noticed. And then there was Chloe. A new photo arrived in the email. This time, she was sitting on the floor with a little girl on her lap, both laughing as they shared a hot dog. The child had blue paint on her hands and a toothless smile that could melt any heart. Julian zoomed in on the picture and noticed something written on the wall behind them. In blue paint, with the crooked letters of a child, it read, "Thank you, Angel Chloe." "Sir?" Elliot asked, noticing his expression. "She didn't post anything," Julian said. "Not a story, not a photo, nothing." "Maybe she doesn't use social media." Everyone uses social media, Elliot. She just doesn't want to be seen. The phone buzzed with another message from Chloe. P.S. The kids want to know if you'd come paint with them on Saturday. I promise the paint comes off, more or less. Julian smiled. She was inviting him to paint walls with orphans. When was the last time someone invited him to do something that didn't involve money, business, or appearances? Get the car ready, Elliot, Julian said, putting the phone away. We're going for a visit. To Lake City Home, sir? I want to understand what makes a person spend $300 on hot dogs when they could buy a Ferrari. These cards really don't have a limit. Elliot smiled discreetly. Maybe she already has something more valuable than a Ferrari, sir. Julian stopped at the door. And what would that be? A purpose. 20 minutes later, Julian was in the back seat of his luxury SUV, watching the city pass by through the window. The contrasts were striking. Downtown, where Serena performed her aerial show, everything sparkled like a postcard. In Capitol Hill, where Mr. Jose's market was located, the streets were simpler, more real. And in Lake City, where Chloe had spent the morning, the houses were modest but full of life. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was an Instagram notification. Serena had tagged him in a photo. My dear Julian, giving me the freedom to fly. Grateful, living my best life. Julian was about to untag himself when another notification arrived. A photo sent directly on WhatsApp from a number he didn't recognize. The image showed Chloe lying on the grass with 5 children around her, all looking at the sky. The caption said, Aunt Chloe, look, a helicopter, sent by Sophia, 6 years old, with Aunt Maria's help. Julian looked out the window and saw the same helicopter Serena had rented flying right above them. 2 women, the same sky, but completely different perspectives. One used his money to rise, the other used it to help others dream. We've arrived, sir, Elliot announced. Julian looked out the window and saw a garden full of children playing. In the middle of them, Chloe Adams was teaching a boy to paint blue butterflies on a white wall. She was covered in paint from head to toe, her hair tied back with an elastic band that had seen better days, and she smiled as if she were in the happiest place on earth. Elliot, Julian said, opening the car door. I think I just discovered what true luxury is. And as he walked toward the orphanage gate, Julian Mercer had no idea he was about to step into a world where money was only paper, but smiles were worth more than gold. When the press turns an act of generosity into a sexist scandal, a millionaire CEO discovers that the only way out is to fake a love that may be becoming all too real. The Seattle Times headline burned on the tablet screen like fire. Rebellious heir humiliates women with black cards. Cruel test exposes CEO of Mercer Labs' misogynistic mindset. Julian clenched his fists as he read the article that destroyed his reputation in Arial 12 characters. The indie coffee shop in Ballard was nearly empty on the rainy Tuesday afternoon. Heavy drops slid down the fogged window, creating shadows that danced across the wooden table where Julian waited. The amber glow of vintage pendant lights made everything look like an independent film, the perfect setting for a conversation that would change 2 lives. Chloe walked in, shaking the rain from her worn coat, her wet hair sticking to her face. She looked smaller without her work uniform, more vulnerable in faded jeans and sneakers that had seen better days. Mr. Mercer, she said, stopping hesitantly near the table. I got your message. Did something serious happen? Julian raised the tablet. Did you see this? Chloe read over his shoulder, frowning. Rebellious heir? They made you sound like a soap opera villain. She sat down in the chair across from him. And how do I appear in this? Worse, you weren't even mentioned. Julian turned the screen. According to them, I made up a cruel test to watch 3 women humiliate themselves for money. The press turned my attempt to find genuine people into a sexist competition. Chloe scoffed. Typical. When a woman spends money on a helicopter, it's empowerment. When a man gives money, it's manipulation. The problem is bigger. Julian slid more articles across the table. Company shares have dropped 15% since yesterday. The board is in panic. Serena gave an interview saying I played with her feelings. She said that? Chloe grabbed his phone and read the article. Wow, she really painted you as a monster. But wait. She stopped at the part about the donations to the orphanage. Did they mention Lake City Home? One line at the end, like it was a footnote. Chloe handed back the phone, clearly annoyed. So let me get this straight. A helicopter ride to the mall makes front-page news, but 300 hot dogs for orphans is just an irrelevant detail? That's why I'm here. Julian leaned forward. I need a truth that sounds like a lie. What do you mean? A fake relationship, a fake engagement, if necessary. The words came out faster than he had planned. 30 days. Enough time for the press to forget the scandal and focus on a love story. Chloe almost choked on the coffee she had just ordered. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? Girlfriend, fiancé, whatever works best to clean up my image. Julian pulled an envelope from his blazer. Simple contract. Public appearances, a few photos, maybe an interview about how we fell in love. In return, Lake City Home gets a permanent monthly donation. Her eyes widened. Are you serious? Completely. $5,000 a month for the orphanage. Forever. Chloe stayed quiet for a long moment, staring out the wet window. A child ran down the street with his mother, laughing loudly as he jumped in puddles. Julian noticed her expression shift. First surprise, then calculation, finally determination. And I need a lie that turns into something good. She looked straight at him. All right, but I have conditions. Name them. First, nothing physical without permission. Does a contract kiss come with an instruction manual? Julian laughed despite the tension. Manual included. Second, I stay myself. No personal stylist, etiquette training, or lessons on how to date a CEO. You can keep your personality intact. Third, if this ever harms the kids, I'm out. Fair. Chloe extended her hand. Then we have a deal, Mr. Mercer. Julian spread the contract on the table. The document had 5 pages of clauses carefully drafted by his legal team. Fees, schedule of appearances, responsibilities of each side. And at the bottom of page 4, in small letters, Clause 8, both parties agree to maintain a strictly professional relationship, avoiding any real emotional involvement. Clause 8, Chloe read aloud. Falling in love prohibited. Interesting that they think it's necessary to put that in writing. Standard legal protection, Julian said, but he felt a strange tightness in his chest. Of course. She took the pen with the Mercer Labs logo he handed her. Because it would be terrible if someone developed real feelings in a fake situation like this, right? There was something in her tone that made Julian look more closely. It would be complicated. Very complicated. Chloe signed with neat cursive handwriting. Good thing we're responsible adults. Julian signed below her, trying to ignore how natural their names looked together on the paper. So, Chloe said, tucking her copy of the contract away, when do we start this make-believe? Now. Julian nodded discreetly toward the corner of the cafe. See that woman with red hair pretending to read a magazine? That's HarperCollins. Chloe didn't turn. Your assistant? What's she doing here? Good question. But if she heard our conversation, the news will be online before we leave this place. Chloe sighed. Then we'd better put on a convincing show. Julian stood up and offered his hand. Ready to be the fake girlfriend of a controversial CEO? Ready. She took his hand, and the electricity of the touch felt far too real for something that was supposed to be fake. But you'll be the one explaining to the kids why Aunt Chloe showed up in the tabloids. They left the cafe holding hands, Julian opening his umbrella over both of them. The Seattle rain created the perfect atmosphere for the first act of their romantic comedy. What neither of them noticed was that Harper wasn't just sitting in the corner, she was also quietly taking pictures with her phone. 2 hours later, the photo was going viral on Twitter with the caption, "Exclusive. Mercer Labs CEO spotted on a romantic date with a mysterious brunette." And in the comments, a poisonous post from Serena Blake. Interesting how some people move on from scandals so quickly. Does she know what she's getting into? The game had officially begun, and the rules were more dangerous than either of them imagined. When a CEO used to running boardrooms finds himself painting walls with orphaned children, he discovers that some contracts are impossible to fulfill. Especially the clause that forbids real feelings. The Lake City Children's Home buzzed with activity on a cloudy Thursday afternoon. Julian Mercer parked the black SUV on the street and watched through the window the organized chaos Chloe had created in the courtyard. Children ran back and forth with paintbrushes in their hands, music played from a portable speaker, and the smell of grilled hot dogs floated in the air. "Sir," Elliot said from the passenger seat. Are you sure you want to do this? Your afternoon schedule. Cancel everything. Julian stepped out of the car, adjusting his blazer. I have more important commitments today. He walked up to the iron gate where a hand-painted sign announced, Art and Hot Dog Festival, sponsored by a mysterious angel. Julian smiled, typical of Chloe not to want public credit. Mr. Mercer. A curly-haired little girl ran up to him, leaving blue paint footprints along the way. Aunt Chloe said you were coming? Did you bring old clothes? Julian looked down at his $3,000 Italian suit. I guess I'll have to improvise. Sophia, don't jump on the man all dressed up. Chloe rushed over, wearing a white t-shirt splattered with colorful stains and her hair tied in a messy bun. Sorry, she's been hyper since her third hot dog. It's fine. Julian crouched down to the girl's level. Sophia, is that right? What color do you like painting the most? Blue, like the sky when it's not sad. Sophia pointed to the half-painted wall behind her. Do you want to help me make clouds? Julian looked at Chloe, who shrugged with a smile. She's the boss today. I just follow orders. All right then. Julian took off his blazer and rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt. Let's make clouds. 20 minutes later, Julian discovered that painting walls was harder than running a tech company. He had blue paint in his hair and had knocked over an entire box of brushes, causing general commotion among the children. Does Chef Mercer approve? Chloe asked, handing him a hot dog. Does it taste like Millionaire CEO or childhood? Definitely childhood. Julian bit into the hot dog and made an exaggerated approving face. 5 stars, better than the French restaurant last night. A small boy stood by the door, holding the hand of one of the caregivers. He was no more than 5 years old, with eyes too big for his thin face. That's Tommy, Chloe explained quietly. He arrived last week, still adjusting. Julian noticed the way the boy looked longingly at the hot dogs but didn't come closer. Hey Tommy, he called. Want to try one? The boy shook his head, hiding behind the caregiver. He doesn't take food from strangers yet, the woman explained. Trauma from the previous family. Julian felt a tightness in his chest. Can I try something? He took another hot dog, took a big bite, and made an exaggerated, satisfied face. Delicious. Then he pretended he was about to eat more, but stopped. Hey Tommy, can you help me? I need someone to tell me if this hot dog is really good. You could be my official taste tester. The boy hesitated, but curiosity overcame fear. He slowly came closer and accepted the hot dog Julian offered. So, Chef Tommy, approved? Tommy took a small bite, then a bigger one. Finally, a shy smile appeared on his face. It's good. Great. Now can you teach me how to paint without knocking everything over? Chloe watched the scene with a sparkle in her eyes that made Julian's heart race. When Tommy took his hand to lead him to the wall, she whispered, Maybe you're learning the basics about people. Maybe, Julian replied, but he couldn't take his eyes off her. The afternoon flew by with laughter, off-key karaoke music, and more paint than any wall needed. Julian discovered he could imitate cartoon voices, that he could make the children laugh by telling stories about board meetings as if they were epic adventures, and that painting butterflies was surprisingly relaxing. When the sun began to set, the children were called in for dinner. Julian and Chloe stayed alone in the courtyard, sitting at a picnic table surrounded by children's artwork. Thank you for today, Chloe said, wiping paint from her hands with a cloth. They'll remember this forever. So will I. Julian looked around, seeing the place with different eyes. Did you grow up in a place like this? Chloe nodded. Sunshine House in Portland. I entered when I was 7, left when I was 18. I go back every birthday to help with the kids' party. That's why you knew exactly how to make all this work. No one disappears when someone is waiting. She looked straight at him. These children need to know that someone cares, that they haven't been forgotten. Julian felt something shift inside him, like a door opening to a room he didn't even know existed. And you never forgot where you came from. I never could. They saved me when I needed it most. Chloe smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. And now I can give back. The caregiver appeared at the door. Chloe, dear, can I take a picture of you two with the children? For the gratitude wall? Of course, Maria. The children gathered around them, Tommy climbing onto Julian's lap without hesitation. The caregiver took a Polaroid that captured the moment perfectly. Julian genuinely smiling for the first time in months, Chloe glowing beside him, surrounded by happy little faces smudged with paint. "For you," Maria said, handing the photo to Chloe. "A gift for your generous hearts." On the way back to the car, Julian noticed Chloe had grown quiet. "Everything okay?" "It's strange," she said, slipping the Polaroid into her bag. "For a few hours, I almost forgot that all of this is pretend." Julian stopped walking. "Chloe?" "No, it's fine." She forced a smile. "Clause 8, remember? No real emotional involvement. I was just staying in character." But when she said it, something in her eyes told a different story. And Julian realized he was also having trouble with Clause 8. They reached the car just as Julian's phone buzzed with a message from Harper. "You need to see this. Urgent." The attachment was a PDF with his law firm's watermark. On the first page, in bold letters, Strategic Engagement Agreement, Confidential. Julian felt his blood run cold. How did she get this? "What is it?" Chloe asked. Before he could answer, her phone rang. A notification from Instagram. Serena had posted a picture of the document on her computer screen with the caption, "When you find out that love has a price and a contract." "What a shame, Chloe. I thought you were different from the rest." The post already had hundreds of likes and cruel comments. Julian and Chloe exchanged a look, knowing the game had completely changed. War had been declared. And this time, no contract clause could protect anyone's heart. When private documents turn into public weapons, a mansion kitchen becomes a battlefield. And sometimes the bravest person is the one who gets hurt. The Mercer Mansion kitchen had never felt so cold, even with pots steaming on the professional stove. Julian watched Elliot prepare dinner for 5 while his stomach churned with anxiety. Outside, the rain had grown heavier, pounding against the windows like accusing fingers. "They've arrived, sir," Elliot murmured, drying his hands on his apron. "And Miss Adams as well." Julian adjusted his tie for the 5th time. Since Serena had leaked the contract the morning before, his phone hadn't stopped ringing. Journalists, furious investors, board members demanding explanations. The headlines burned in his mind. "Arranged marriage to clean up image of cruel millionaire." The kitchen door opened and Serena walked in as if she owned the place, followed by Harper and Vivian. All dressed as if they were going to a premiere, ready for the performance of their lives. "Julian, darling," Serena purred, kissing the air near his cheek. "How wonderful that you finally decided to be honest with us." Harper adjusted her Hermes bag on her shoulder. "It was quite a surprise to learn about the arrangement online. I thought we were close enough for confidences. Especially considering I helped leak the information," Vivian said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oops, did I say too much?" Julian felt his blood freeze. "You what?" "Serena needed help hacking Harper's system. I know people." Vivian shrugged as if she were talking about the weather. "Business is business." Before Julian could respond, Chloe came in through the back door, shaking the rain off her old coat. She looked smaller than the other 3, but kept her chin up with the dignity he admired. "Sorry I'm late," she said, hanging her coat on a chair. "The bus was delayed because of the rain." "Bus," Serena laughed loudly. "Julian, darling, your fiancé still takes the bus? How authentic." "At least I pay my own fare," Chloe replied, keeping her good humor. "It's an interesting feeling, you should try it." Harper moved closer to the marble island, tapping her French manicured nails on the surface. "Chloe, right? I have to admit you were clever. Securing an engagement contract without having to fake emotions must feel liberating." "More liberating than pretending to be friends for years," Chloe replied, looking straight at Harper. "At least my hypocrisy has an expiration date." Vivian opened a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's rent. "Then let's celebrate honesty. Julian, did you really think you could fool us?" "This wasn't supposed to be public," Julian said, his voice tense. "It was a private agreement to help a charity." "Oh yes, the orphanage," Serena said with disdain. "How convenient to use poor children to clean up your image. Very calculating, even for you." Chloe stepped forward. "Wait a minute. And you," Serena continued, ignoring the interruption, "buying rice and cheap hot dogs to look charitable. Please, any of us could have done that." "But none of you did," Chloe shot back, her voice rising. "You rented helicopters, bought clothes, and threw parties to impress rich people. I bought food for children who were hungry." Harper laughed softly. What a touching speech. Did you rehearse it? I don't need to rehearse to have a heart. Heart? Vivian poured herself more wine. Darling, you signed a contract for money, just like any of us. The only difference is that you were more creative with your improvisation. The knife Elliot was using to chop vegetables hit the cutting board in a tense rhythm, like war drums. Julian watched Chloe being attacked from all sides, feeling paralyzed between anger and helplessness. You know what's funny? Chloe said, leaning on the counter. You're all here attacking me for taking money to help orphan children, but you spent tens of thousands on nonsense in less than 48 hours. Nonsense? Serena was offended. I invested in experiences. You rented a helicopter to go shopping. That's not an investment, that's showing off. And you bought hot dogs for orphans. That's not charity, that's cheap marketing. Chloe was silent for a moment, and Julian saw something break in her eyes. Cheap marketing, she repeated slowly. That's how you see it? Chloe, Julian began, but she raised her hand to stop him. No, leave it. She stared at the three women. You want the truth? My cheap filled plates and walls with color. My cheap made children smile for the first time in weeks. My cheap created memories that will last forever. She grabbed her bag. And you? What did you create? Instagram posts? Hashtags? Envy? Where are you going? Julian asked, following her toward the door. Away from this theater. Chloe stopped at the door. Well, what's next? The sink has to sign an NDA too? Serena laughed loudly. So dramatic. Even hunger isn't public, Chloe said, looking at Julian, but it lives in invisible headlines. And with that, she walked out into the rain, leaving an awkward silence in the kitchen. Well, Vivian said, finishing the wine, that was interesting. Julian ran to the window and saw Chloe walking in the rain, without an umbrella, without looking back. Something in his chest shattered like glass. Julian, Serena called, but he was already grabbing his car keys. Elliot, he shouted, cancel everything, and as for them, he looked at the three women, you may leave. An hour later, Julian was alone in his office when his phone buzzed. A bank notification. Donation processed, $50,000, Lake City Children's Home. Source, personal account C. Adams. He frowned. Chloe didn't have $50,000. But then he understood. She had transferred the money from the card he had given her directly to the orphanage. A second notification. Card canceled at the holder's request. Julian rushed to the window, but outside there was only rain and empty streets. Chloe Adams had vanished, taking with her the only real truth he had found in years. And for the first time in his life, Julian Mercer had no idea how to fix what had been broken. When a CEO learns that apologies don't work like negotiations, he discovers that some words only have value if they come from the heart. But is there still time to fix what was broken? Pike Place Market at 11 at night was a different world. The closed stalls created strange shadows under neon lights that reflected on the rain-soaked floor dripping from the old roof. Julian walked between the empty stands, following the muffled sound of someone stacking boxes. He found her at the back of the market near the fish stall, assembling cardboard boxes with the determination of someone on a mission. Chloe was wearing the same clothes from the morning, but now they were dry, and her hair was tied in a practical bun that revealed the curve of her neck he had memorized without realizing it. "How did you find me?" she asked without looking up, folding another box with military precision. "Elliot has his methods." Julian approached slowly, as if she were a frightened animal that might run away at any moment. "And you're not as good at disappearing as you think." "I'm still learning." Chloe finally looked at him. "What do you want, Julian?" The simple question caught him off guard. "I want to apologize." "For which part? Exposing me to 3 cruel women, or standing by while they tore me apart?" Julian swallowed hard. "Both, and for not defending you when I should have." "Is your apology being recorded for quality control?" Chloe went back to folding boxes. "Because it sounded too formal to be sincere. I never learned how to say I'm sorry without making it sound like a negotiation. Try like a human." Julian took a deep breath and sat down on the wet floor beside her, staining his Italian suit. "Chloe, I'm sorry. You didn't deserve to go through that, especially after being the only genuine person in all this mess." "Better." She stopped working. "But that still doesn't explain why you're here." "Because I found out you transferred all the card money to Lake City Home, And because you canceled the card afterward. Julian picked up a box and tried to fold it, failing miserably. That means you aren't doing it for money. Bingo, Sherlock. Took you about 3 chapters to figure it out. 3 chapters? Chloe smiled for the first time since he arrived. Nothing. Just, sometimes life feels like a badly written story where the main character takes too long to understand the obvious. Julian finally managed to fold a box correctly. And what story would that be? The one about a millionaire CEO who thinks he can buy loyalty but finds out the best things in life have no price. Chloe grabbed another box. Spoiler alert, he learns the lesson in the end. And the maid who steals his heart? She probably runs away to another country to avoid more unnecessary drama. They worked in silence for a few minutes, the sound of boxes being folded echoing in the empty market. Julian noticed the soft smell of cinnamon that always seemed to follow Chloe, as if she carried sweet secrets in her pockets. "What are these boxes for?" he asked. "Spring festival at the orphanage next week. They'll need supplies for the activities." Chloe hesitated. "Someone made a substantial anonymous donation last night. Imagine that. You know I'll find out it was you, right?" "You can try." Julian smiled. "But I have very good lawyers creating false trails. And I have very smart kids asking inconvenient questions." A drop of water dripped from the ceiling right between them, making both laugh. Among the closed fish stalls and flickering neon lights, something shifted in the air. The tension gave way to an intimacy neither expected. "Chloe," Julian said, moving closer, "you can cancel the contract, but you can't cancel what I feel." "What do you feel?" she whispered. "That Clause 8 was the worst idea I ever had." They were so close that Julian could count the freckles on her nose. Chloe tilted her face up, her lips slightly parted, and then the market's security alarm blared at deafening volume. "What the hell?" Chloe shouted over the noise, pulling away as if shocked. "Motion sensor," Julian shouted back, pointing at the ceiling. "We stood still too long." "If the fish flies, I kiss you," Chloe said, looking at the stall beside them. "Otherwise, we run." They ran for the exit, carrying a few boxes, laughing like teenagers sneaking away from a prank. The rain outside felt almost tropical compared to the deafening alarm. "That was," Julian began when they finally stopped on the street. "Interrupted by a security system?" Chloe finished. "Too romantic for me. I was going to say unexpected." Chloe looked at him under the streetlight. "Julian, if we're going to continue this, I need one thing." "What?" "No truth, no us." She lifted her chin firmly. "No contracts, no strategic deals, no lies for the press. Either it's real or it's nothing." Julian felt his heart race. "And what if it's real? Then we'll find out together." Chloe smiled, but there was caution in her eyes. "But if you lie to me again, I'll disappear for real. And then not even Elliot will be able to find me." "Understood. Good." She picked up the boxes. "Now will you help me load this into the car? The kids are waiting." Julian carried the remaining boxes, feeling something light in his chest for the first time in weeks. Maybe there was hope after all. What he didn't know was that 3 blocks away HarperCollins was finishing a call with Marcus Wheeler, Seattle's most venomous blogger. "Yes, Marcus. I have photos, documents, and some very interesting information about Miss Adams' past." Harper smiled at the phone. "How about an exclusive story on the maid who fooled the richest CEO in the city?" The war was far from over. And this time, the attacks would come from where no one expected. When well-crafted lies meet the speed of the internet, even the purest truth can be destroyed in seconds. And sometimes the person who trusts you the most is the one with the most power to destroy you. The electric storms sweeping across Seattle in the early hours of Friday felt like a warning. On the 40th floor of Mercer Labs, Julian watched the lightning cut through the sky while his phone exploded with notifications. Each flash lit up his tense face reflected in the glass. "Sir," Elliot entered the office carrying a tablet and a worried expression. "You need to see this immediately." The screen showed the headline that made Julian's stomach turn. "Exclusive. Con artist Maid diverts orphanage donations to personal account." Right below, a photo of Chloe leaving the bank with an envelope in her hands, edited to look suspicious. "It's from Marcus Wheeler's blog," Elliot explained. "Posted 20 minutes ago. It already has 50,000 views." Julian read the article, feeling his anger rise with each line. Forged screenshots showed fake transfers, edited documents suggested Chloe had diverted funds, and even the photo of the children with blue paint at the orphanage was distorted, with a caption hinting that she used the kids as emotional cover. Who did this? Julian muttered, but deep down he already knew the answer. The office door opened and Harper walked in, pretending to be surprised. Julian, have you seen the news? It's terrible what they're saying about Chloe. Terrible, Julian repeated, studying her face, especially considering half of this so-called evidence came from internal company documents. Harper blinked innocently. Do you think someone from inside leaked information? I think someone very creative with Photoshop and access to our systems decided to create a story. Julian turned to her. The question is, why? Maybe because some people care about your reputation, Harper said, adjusting her blazer. Julian, you need to understand this will destroy the company if we don't act fast. Julian's phone rang. It was Richard Morrison, chairman of the board. Julian, we need to talk. Now. It's 2 a.m, Richard, and our company is being destroyed by a con artist Maid. Boardroom, 15 minutes. The call ended, and Julian felt the world collapsing. Outside, another bolt of lightning lit up the city, followed by thunder that shook the windows. 20 minutes later, Julian faced 5 board members on a video conference, all with expressions ranging from concern to fury. Shares dropped 22% since the story broke, Morrison announced. Investors are asking how you can run a billion-dollar company if you were fooled by a maid. She's not a con artist, Julian said firmly. The evidence is fake. Do you have proof of that? Asked Sarah Chen, the CFO. Julian hesitated. He was absolutely sure, but proving it was another matter. I'm investigating. We don't have time for investigations, Morrison cut him off. You need to cut ties with this woman publicly, today. I won't do that. Julian. Harper stepped closer to the conference table. I know it's hard, but sometimes we have to make unpleasant decisions to protect something bigger. Since when did you become my public relations advisor? Since your fake girlfriend became a real problem for all of us. The silence in the room was broken only by the sound of rain against the window. Julian looked at Harper and finally saw clearly who she really was. The meeting is over, he said, ending the video conference. Julian, Harper began, but he raised his hand. Leave. You're making a mistake. The mistake was trusting you. After Harper left, Julian remained alone with Elliot and the weight of impossible decisions. His phone buzzed with a message from Chloe. I saw the news. Don't worry about me. Just protect your company. Julian typed and erased 5 different replies before sending, I'll hold back the rain. Will you hold it with me? The answer came quickly. You can't hold back thunder. At Joe's Corner Market in Capitol Hill, Chloe was trying to buy milk and bread when she noticed the whispers. The store owner, who always greeted her warmly, avoided eye contact. A customer discreetly pointed at her, whispering, That's her to her friend. If reputation had an umbrella, Chloe murmured to herself, I'd need 3. She paid quickly and left, feeling the weight of accusing eyes. On the street, a news van was parked in front of her building. Chloe turned around and walked in the opposite direction, pulling up the hood of her coat. Her phone rang. It was Maria from the orphanage. Chloe, dear, are you all right? They saw the news and... It's all lies, Maria. I know, child. I know your heart. But maybe it's better if you don't come here for a few days, until things calm down. Chloe felt the world collapse. The children. They'll understand. And you're still their angel, no matter what the internet says. When Chloe hung up, she was crying in the rain in front of a closed bakery. For the first time since it all began, she felt truly alone. Meanwhile, at the Mercer Mansion, Serena was live on Instagram for 40,000 viewers. Friends, I didn't want to talk about this, but Julian deserves our understanding, she said with crocodile tears. To find out his maid became a fiancé through a contract and even took money from poor children. My heart is broken for him. The comments exploded with messages of support for Serena and hatred toward Chloe. The story was being rewritten in real time, and the truth was drowning in a flood of well-crafted lies. Back at the office, Julian got the call he feared. Morrison again. Julian, the board has made a decision. Either you end things publicly with this woman and accuse her of fraud, or we'll assume you are no longer fit to lead this company. You're giving me an ultimatum? We're saving your career and our company." Julian looked out the window, where the storm still raged. Somewhere in the city, Chloe was alone, facing the fury of a world that believed well-packaged lies. He had 24 hours to choose between the woman he loved and everything he had worked for his whole life. And for the first time, Julian Mercer had no idea what the right choice was. There are moments in life when choosing the right thing means losing everything that matters. And sometimes the courage to do what is right comes too late to fix what is already broken. The bus stop in Fremont at 5 in the morning felt like the end of the world. Dense fog swallowed the streetlights, creating ghostly halos that turned Seattle into a city of lost dreams. Chloe sat on the wet bench, a worn-out backpack at her feet and red eyes from a sleepless night. Julian found her exactly where Elliot said she would be. The butler had his methods, but this time, Julian suspected Chloe had made things easier. Maybe she wanted to be found. Maybe she needed a proper ending. "The bus to Portland leaves in 20 minutes, she said without looking at him. "I'm going to visit Sunshine House, back to where it all began." "Chloe?" Julian sat beside her, noticing how she shifted slightly away. "I know it seems impossible now, but we can prove it's all lies." "With what lawyers? With what time?" She gave a humorless laugh. "Julian, you have an empire to save. I have a ruined reputation and a $40 bus ticket. It doesn't have to be this way." "Yes, it does." Chloe pulled something from her bag, the black card he had given her, now cut in half, along with the crumpled, rain-soaked contract. "Promise fulfilled? Too bad it wasn't the right one." Julian took the pieces, feeling the weight of what they represented. Clause 8. No one fell in love, remember? Chloe finally looked at him, and Julian saw it was a lie. It was all there in her eyes: love, pain, shattered hope, at least officially. The bus radio that approached played a soft song, the same one that had been in the background that afternoon at the orphanage when they painted together. Julian felt his chest tighten. "I tried to defend you yesterday," he said quickly. "In the board meeting. But you hesitated. It wasn't a question. I saw it in your face when you got here, the look of someone who made a decision he hates, but made anyway. They threatened to shut down the company. Thousands of jobs." "Julian, you don't need to explain." Chloe stood up, grabbing her backpack. "You chose what made sense. I would have chosen the same." "No, you wouldn't." "You're right, I wouldn't." She gave a sad smile. "That's why you're the CEO of a billion-dollar company, and I'm an unemployed maid." The bus stopped with a pneumatic sigh, and the door opened, revealing a sleepy driver and a few passengers who looked like refugees of the early dawn. "Chloe, wait." Julian gently held her arm. "If I find a way to prove it's all forged, if destiny is late, I'll send a message through the driver." She gave him a quick kiss on the cheek, so soft he almost doubted it had happened. "Take care of the Lake City children for me. They deserve someone who doesn't disappear when life gets complicated." "You're not disappearing. You're running away." "Sometimes it's the same thing." Chloe stepped onto the bus without looking back. Julian stood on the sidewalk, watching her face in the foggy window as the bus pulled away into the mist. She was holding the Polaroid of them with the children, the only thing left from everything they had built together. "I chose the company," he murmured to the empty fog, "and lost the one who truly mattered." 3 hours later, Julian was in his office trying to pretend work mattered when Elliot rushed in with an expression Julian had never seen on his butler's face. "Sir, I found something." Elliot spilled the contents of a folder onto the desk. Invoices, receipts, bank transfer slips, all tied to the evidence that had incriminated Chloe. "Miss Collins forgot to clear the computer history," Elliot explained, arranging the documents. "Photoshop, fake bank transfers, even the fake email account she used to send the information to the blogger." Julian picked up one of the invoices. It was from the print shop where Harper had ordered false documents. The date was the day before the news leak. "She planned all of this," Julian said, feeling a mix of anger and disbelief. "But why?" "There's more." Elliot showed screenshots of conversations between Harper and Serena. "They were working together from the start. Miss Blake wanted you back, and Miss Collins wanted your position at the company." "My position?" "She expected you to be fired by the board. As your closest assistant, she would take over many of your responsibilities." Elliot paused. It's a promotion worth several million a year. Julian stared at the evidence spread across the desk, each document proof of systematic betrayal by people he trusted. But all he could think about was Chloe on a dusty road to Portland, carrying the blame for crimes she hadn't committed. How long to Portland? By bus? About 3.5 hours. Julian checked the clock. 7:40 in the morning. Prepare a press conference for noon. Sir? And cancel all today's meetings. I have an employee to rehire. She's no longer your employee, sir. Julian smiled for the first time in days. You're right. I hope she accepts a promotion. As Julian rushed to the elevator, two things were happening simultaneously in Seattle. HarperCollins received a call from her lawyer saying they needed to talk urgently, and the bus to Portland broke down in a small town halfway to its destination. Fate, apparently, had other plans for Chloe Adams. And sometimes, when life is about to collapse completely, that's when miracles decide to appear. When a billionaire CEO puts on a $12 hoodie to investigate his own company, he discovers that sometimes the truth is hidden in the most obvious places, and that saving someone can matter more than saving himself. Julian Mercer never imagined he would spend a Tuesday night crouched behind a dumpster in Capitol Hill, wearing a hoodie bought at a convenience store and rain boots borrowed from the building's janitor. Beside him, Elliot adjusted a wool cap that fogged up his glasses. CEO-level disguise, $12 hoodie, Julian muttered, watching HarperCollins leave a small cafe 3 blocks from the office. If any investor sees me like this, I'll be a meme by tomorrow. Sir, Elliot whispered, she's heading toward that black car, the same one parked near the market when the first photos leaked. They followed at a safe distance, 2 men in suits trying to blend into a neighborhood where everyone wore ripped jeans and vintage sneakers. Julian discovered that being a millionaire taught him nothing about urban espionage. Harper stopped in front of a warehouse converted into luxury apartments. From a lit window on the 3rd floor, they saw moving silhouettes. She wasn't alone. How are we going up? Julian asked. Fire escape, Elliot pointed. And your gymnastics experience, sir? 0, but my motivation is at 100%. 20 minutes later, Julian was hanging from a rusty fire escape, trying not to look down while Elliot, surprisingly agile for his 60 years, climbed ahead. The window was slightly open, and voices drifted toward them. The blogger has already published the second part, Harper's voice said. Now we have evidence that she used a false identity to work illegally. Perfect, Serena replied. The dirtier she looks, the more Julian will realize he needs someone reliable by his side. Julian felt his blood boil. They weren't just destroying Chloe, they were running a systematic smear campaign. And is Marcus willing to publish more? Asked a third voice Julian didn't recognize. For $5,000 per article, he'll publish that she's an alien if we ask, Harper laughed. The important thing is to keep Julian isolated and vulnerable. Elliot pointed to the window ledge, where a pen with the Mercer Labs logo had been left behind. The same pen Julian had given Chloe to sign the contract, now being used as forged evidence. Julian photographed everything with his phone, the conversations, the documents spread across the table, the computer screen showing an open Photoshop file with the manipulated image of Chloe leaving the bank. But when he saw the original file, his heart stopped. On the screen, clear as crystal, was the real photo. Chloe leaving the bank after depositing her own donation to the orphanage, with the official stamp of Lake City Children's Home visible on the envelope she carried. She donated her own money, Julian whispered. All this time, she was using her own money to help the children. In the same digital folder, dozens of other files proved her innocence. Proof of legitimate donations, unedited videos of the children playing with blue paint, not being exploited as emotional props, and even statements from orphanage staff confirming that Chloe had volunteered there for years. We have everything we need, Elliot whispered. Julian kept taking photos, but now with a different purpose. He was no longer gathering evidence to defend himself. He was collecting ammunition to fight back. Sir, Elliot touched his arm. They're coming toward the window. They went down the fire escape with the grace of 2 bears on ice skates. Julian tore his suit pants. Elliot lost a shoe, but they reached the ground with all the evidence intact. Back in the car, Julian organized the photos on his phone while Elliot drove through Seattle's empty streets. "What are we going to do with this, sir?" Julian looked at the last photo, Serena and Harper toasting with champagne while watching the news about the con artist Maid. In the background, on a table, was the Polaroid photo of him and Chloe with the children, now marked with a red X. "I don't save my image," Julian said, his voice firm for the first time in days. "I save the truth." "Finally, sir. Prepare a press conference for tomorrow at noon at the Space Needle. Interesting place for a press conference. I want all of Seattle to see, and Elliot." Julian paused. "I need you to find Chloe, wherever she is." "I already did, sir. The bus broke down in Centralia. She's staying at the bus station motel." "How did you—" "I have my methods and a network of contacts that includes very friendly bus drivers." Julian smiled. "You're frighteningly efficient." "Thank you, sir. Send her a letter, a handwritten invitation to the press conference, and include this." Julian pulled from his pocket the Polaroid photo he had taken from Harper's table. "She'll understand." 2 hours later, in a discreet police station in Capitol Hill, Julian handed over copies of all the evidence to a detective who was too impressed to ask questions about how it had been obtained. "Digital fraud, defamation, conspiracy to damage reputation. We have enough for a full investigation," the detective said. "These women are in serious trouble." "I don't want revenge," Julian clarified. "I want justice, and I want the truth to be public before it destroys more lives." Back home, Julian stayed awake until dawn, preparing the most important speech of his life. It wasn't about saving the company. It wasn't about cleaning his image. It was about a woman who bought hot dogs for orphan children while the world tried to turn her into a villain. And when the sun rose over Seattle, Julian Mercer finally knew exactly who he wanted to be when he grew up. The man Chloe Adams had always believed he could become. In Centralia, a small town halfway between Seattle and Portland, Chloe Adams woke up to find an envelope slipped under her motel room door. Inside, a handwritten invitation and a Polaroid photo of two people in love who didn't yet know that their love was about to save more than just their own hearts. Fate, at last, was ready for its great turning point. When the truth finally finds its stage, even Seattle's sky stops crying. And sometimes you have to climb very high to show the world who truly deserves to be above the clouds. The Space Needle had never hosted a press conference like this one. The observation deck buzzed with cameras, reporters, and onlookers as torn clouds revealed pieces of sunlight that hadn't appeared in Seattle for days. Julian Mercer was at the center of it all, but his eyes scanned the crowd, searching for a specific face. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian began, adjusting the microphone. "I promise the only contract today is with the truth, and with gravity." A few nervous laughs echoed across the platform. In the background, the city stretched out like a gray carpet, dotted with green, but all attention was fixed on the man who had called the whole of Seattle to hear what he had to say. In the past few days, you've seen headlines about a cruel CEO who humiliated women with black cards and was deceived by a scheming maid. Julian paused, letting the wind carry his words. "Half of that story is true. The other half is a carefully built lie." He nodded to Elliot, who activated the giant screen set up for the occasion. The first image that appeared was the original photo of Chloe leaving the bank, not the edited version that had circulated online. This is Chloe Adams depositing her own donation to the Lake City Children's Home. She was using her money, not mine, to help orphans. The photo you saw in the newspapers was digitally altered to look suspicious. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Cameras clicked frantically. But I'll go further. Julian took a deep breath. I really was the cruel millionaire this city painted me as. I was the one who created a ridiculous test with black cards. I was the one who hesitated to defend her when I should have. She was the courage I lacked. The next image on the screen showed Harper in her apartment, celebrating with Serena while watching the fake news. Julian had blurred some details to protect privacy, but the scene was clear. These two women orchestrated a systematic smear campaign. They created fake evidence, bribed bloggers, and manipulated the media. Julian looked straight into the cameras. And I almost let them destroy the only genuine person I've met in years. The screen now showed the real video from the orphanage party, children laughing, painting with blue tempera, eating hot dogs. There was no exploitation, only pure joy. Chloe Adams is not a con artist. She's someone who buys 300 hot dogs for children who were hungry. Someone who paints walls blue because colors make people smile. Someone who donates her own money without wanting public credit. The theme song that had played on the orphanage radio began softly over the speakers. Julian had asked for it to be included. It was the sound of genuine happiness. "If I'm going to fix my image," Julian said, his voice rising with emotion, "let it be by becoming more like her." The crowd erupted in applause. Journalists shouted questions, but Julian raised his hand for silence. "I have one last thing to say." The screen now displayed the Polaroid photo of him and Chloe with the children, enlarged so everyone could see the genuine smiles. This photo was taken at the Lake City Children's Home with permission from the children and caregivers. It shows two people who fell in love despite a contract that forbade exactly that. More applause, now mixed with a few ahs from the audience. "Chloe, if you're watching me from somewhere," Julian looked directly into the main cameras. "I tore up Clause 8. I tore up all the clauses. And if you give me a chance, I'll spend the rest of my life proving you deserved someone brave from the very first day." The ovation was deafening. Reporters shouted questions about the criminal charges against Harper and Serena, about the future of the company, about when he and Chloe had truly fallen in love. But Julian was no longer listening. At the back of the crowd, half hidden behind a group of tourists, he saw a worn coat he knew well. Brown hair tousled by the wind, eyes that sparkled even from a distance. Chloe was there. She had come. "Thank you all," Julian said quickly into the microphone. "More details will be provided by the press office." And then he did something no billionaire CEO should ever do at an official press conference. He ran. Julian descended the Space Needles 505 feet faster than any high-speed elevator could take him. He jumped the last steps, pushed through doors, dodged groups of tourists, and raced through the streets of Seattle as if his life depended on it. Because maybe it did. When he reached the base of the tower, breathless and with his suit wrinkled, Chloe was standing on the sidewalk, holding the handwritten invitation he had sent. "You came," he said, trying to catch his breath. "You had to come." She smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. "Someone sent me an invite, saying they were going to cause an epic scene and needed witnesses. So, approved? Speech, 10 out of 10. Coming down the stairs, 5 out of 10. You almost tripped on the last step." "I was in a hurry." "For what?" Julian stepped closer, slowly this time. "To ask your forgiveness, to ask for a second chance, to ask if you would have dinner with me tonight with no contract involved." Chloe looked up at the sky, where the clouds were finally clearing completely, revealing a blue as pure as the paint they used with the children. "It depends," she said, with that mischievous smile he loved. "Will there be hot dogs?" "As many as you want." "And can the kids come?" "All of them. And do you promise you'll never hesitate to defend me again?" "I promise I'll only hesitate to make sure I'm being brave enough." Chloe laughed, and the sound was better than any applause. "Then I accept, but I have one condition." "What?" "Next time you want to impress me," she said, stepping so close their faces were inches apart, "you don't need to rent the whole Space Needle. I'm impressed by simple things, like honesty." And when Julian kissed her there on the sidewalk in Seattle, with tourists taking pictures and the sun finally shining after days of rain, he knew he had found something more valuable than any fortune. He had found his home. But the story was not over yet, because on Lake Union, Vivian Cross watched the live broadcast of the press conference with a mysterious smile and a phone in her hand. Some happy endings, she thought, deserve a proper celebration. Sometimes the perfect place for a proposal isn't an expensive restaurant or a tropical beach. Sometimes it's where everything began, among the smell of cinnamon and the promise that true love doesn't need a script. Pike Place Market at late afternoon had a special kind of magic that no $1,000,000 setting could buy. The light drizzle created a romantic mist over the stalls, and the smell of cinnamon from the warm cookies floated through the air like an invisible hug. Julian walked between the vendors until he found what he was looking for. A small makeshift table where Chloe was selling homemade cookies. Heart cookies for Lake City Home, read the handwritten sign. Each cookie helps a child smile. She was focused arranging the sweets when Julian approached, and even 3 days after the press conference that changed everything, his heart still raced when he saw her. "How much for a cookie that comes with forgiveness?" he asked. Chloe looked up and smiled in that way that made the world make sense. "Depends on how big the mistake was." "Epic mistake. Space Needle level." "Ah, then it will be expensive." She pretended to calculate. 2 cookies and an honest conversation. Julian took 2 cinnamon cookies and sat on the plastic stool next to the table. "Chloe, I know the press conference was a start, but I want to apologize your way too. Simple, direct, sincere." "I'm listening." "I was wrong. I hesitated when I should have fought. I let fear and pressure speak louder than my heart." Julian bit the cookie. It was perfect, like everything she made, and I almost lost the best thing that ever happened to me because of that. Better than a private helicopter? Much better. Helicopters don't make cinnamon cookies or teach children to paint butterflies. Chloe laughed, and the sound was like music. "I accept your apology, but I have a question." "What?" "What do we do now? No contracts, no strategic agreements, no clauses that forbid feelings, just the 2 of us." Julian took something from his pocket, a small paper bag with blue paint stains. "Remember the gouache paint you bought on the first day?" "I remember. Why do you have a bag of it?" "Because I kept it as a memento of the first time someone showed me that infinite money can buy small, important things." Julian opened the bag, revealing a simple white gold ring with a small blue stone. "And because I wanted this moment to be about who we really are." Chloe stopped breathing. "Julian, I know it's crazy. We've known each other a few weeks, fought for half that time, and I almost ruined everything by being a coward." Julian knelt right there in the middle of Pike Place Market while vendors and tourists began to stop and watch. "But if it's going to work, I want it to be with you. And if it goes wrong, let it be with laughter," she added, tears in her eyes. "Chloe Adams, will you marry me? No contracts, no clauses, nothing but the promise that we'll face everything together?" She looked at the simple ring, then at the man kneeling on the wet floor of the market, then at the small crowd forming around them. "I accept," she said, "as long as you learn how to cut onions without calling the press." The crowd burst into applause and whistles. Julian slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made to be there. "How did you know the size?" Chloe asked. "Elliot has his methods, and I pay attention to important details." They kissed as Seattle applauded around them, and this time there was no security alarm, no interruption, nothing but the taste of cinnamon and the certainty that some moments are worth more than any fortune. "Hey," Chloe whispered against his lips. "Did you realize you just proposed to me in the same place where we almost kissed for the first time?" "I did. And did you realize that this time, no one can interrupt us?" Challenge accepted. They were about to kiss again when a familiar voice interrupted. What a beautiful scene. Definitely worthy of a proper party. Julian and Chloe turned to find Vivian Cross standing there, elegant as always, but with a genuine smile neither of them had ever seen before. "Vivian?" Julian frowned. "What are you doing here?" "Delivering invitations personally." She handed each of them a golden envelope. "For your engagement party. Saturday night, Mercer Mansion. Theme, donations for Lake City Home." "We didn't schedule any event," Chloe said, confused. "I did, as an apology for helping Serena and Harper in the beginning." Vivian looked genuinely embarrassed. "I thought it was just harmless fun. I didn't imagine they would go that far." Julian studied her face. "And now?" "Now I want to make things right. The event will raise funds for the orphanage, and all of Seattle's elite will find out who Chloe really is." Vivian smiled. "Besides, every bride deserves a proper engagement party." Chloe looked at Julian, who shrugged. "What do you say? Want a party where you're the star instead of being humiliated?" "As long as they have hot dogs on the menu," Chloe said, laughing. "And they will," Vivian promised. "Gourmet hot dogs, but still hot dogs." When Vivian walked away, Julian hugged Chloe from behind, breathing in the cinnamon scent that now meant home. "So," he murmured in her ear, "ready to officially be the future Mrs. Mercer?" "Ready. But I have one final condition." "What is it?" "The children from the orphanage will be our flower girls and ring bearers." "All of them?" "All of them, especially Tommy." Julian laughed, picturing the loudest, happiest wedding Seattle had ever seen. Perfect. Couldn't be any other way. And as they walked back home, hand in hand through the stalls of Pike Place Market, neither of them imagined that Vivian was already on the phone arranging not only an engagement party, but the most ambitious charity event the city had ever seen. Some happy endings, she had decided, deserved to begin in style. When a wedding brings together gourmet hot dogs, orphaned children as flower girls and ring bearers, and a CEO who finally learned what truly matters, even the Seattle sky decides to cooperate. Some happy endings are worth waiting a lifetime for. The Mercer Mansion had never looked so alive. Golden lights danced among the garden trees, creating a setting that mixed elegance with family warmth. For the first time in months, rays of sunlight escaped through Seattle's clouds, as if even the weather wanted to celebrate. Chloe adjusted her simple white silk dress, no dramatic train or expensive embroidery, just her being herself. Beside her, 6-year-old Sophia held the little basket of petals with the seriousness of someone who had a very important mission. "Aunt Chloe," she whispered, "what if I drop all the flowers?" "Then we'll say it's a shower of love," Chloe replied, fixing the flower crown on the girl's head. "Weddings don't have rules, only love." On the other side of the garden, Julian tried not to laugh as Tommy, now 5.5, explained to the other boys how to carry the rings without breaking the wedding. "If you drop them, Julian and Aunt Chloe will have to date forever instead of getting married," the boy said with absolute authority. "Tommy," Julian bent down to his level, "even if you drop the rings, I'll marry her anyway." "Promise?" "Promise." Elliot approached, carrying a small blue velvet box. "Sir, I almost forgot to mention, I kept the rings in a safe place." He opened the box, revealing he had placed the rings inside a small sealed jar of blue paint. Special edition for the occasion. Julian laughed out loud. "Elliot, you're a genius of nostalgia." "I learned from the best, sir." The music began, the same song that had played on the radio during the children's party months ago, now arranged for a string quartet. It was the perfect soundtrack for a story that started in chaos and found its harmony. The children came down first, tossing petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy. Sophia actually spilled half of her basket. But instead of worrying, she started dancing among the fallen flowers, making everyone laugh. When Chloe appeared, walking alone down the improvised aisle between the chairs, Julian felt as if he were seeing the sunrise for the first time. She carried a small bouquet of wildflowers and the old synthetic leather receipt holder that now held her handwritten vows. "Friends," the officiant began when they met at the altar, decorated with blue paint and yellow flowers. "We are gathered not only to celebrate a union, but a lesson about what truly matters in life." Julian and Chloe wrote their own vows, because apparently they think they can do better than centuries-old traditions. He continued, earning laughter from the small crowd. Julian pulled a paper from his pocket. "Chloe, when I met you, you were carrying napkins and dropping glasses. Today you're still dropping things, but mostly my walls and my prejudices. You taught me that true wealth is children laughing, that real luxury is having someone who accepts you when you're impossible, and that the best investment in life is in a person who buys 300 hot dogs for the hungry." Chloe took her vows from the receipt holder. "Julian, when I met you, you were a complicated millionaire CEO who needed instructions to act like a normal person. Today you're still complicated, but at least now you know how to comfort a child and don't call a press conference to chop onions." The audience laughed, especially the children who loved it when Aunt Chloe made jokes. "You proved that some people are worth any storm, that true love doesn't need a contract, and that sometimes the right person shows up at the most impossible moment in the most unlikely way." When they exchanged rings Elliot had managed to rescue from the paint jar without major accidents, Julian whispered, "Even on my darkest days, you were my sunshine inside." "Then let the rain wash the outside now," Chloe replied, completing the phrase that had become theirs. The kiss that sealed their union was applauded by an audience that included powerful CEOs and children who shouted "yuck" at the most romantic moment, exactly as it should be. During the reception, tables spread throughout the garden offered everything from gourmet hot dogs to French petit fours. The theme music played softly as couples danced and children ran between the tables. Vivian stepped onto a small, improvised stage. Friends, as a way to celebrate this love and redeem myself from past mistakes, I am pleased to announce the creation of the Mercer Adams Permanent Fund for the Lake City Children's Home. She pointed to a table where rare wine bottles were being auctioned. Today we raised enough to guarantee meals, activities, and care for these children for the next 10 years. The ovation was spontaneous and emotional. Meanwhile, at a downtown police station, HarperCollins was signing papers that made her dismissal official and began her digital fraud case. Serena, in her empty penthouse, watched the live broadcast of the wedding while her lawyers discussed settlements to avoid bigger lawsuits. Justice sometimes arrives quietly. At night, when the last children had been taken back to the orphanage and the guests had said goodbye, Julian and Chloe danced alone in the garden lit by soft lights, with Seattle glowing in the background. "Mrs. Mercer," Julian said, twirling her slowly, "how does it feel to be officially part of Seattle's most complicated family?" "I feel at home," she answered. "And you, Mr. Mercer, how does it feel to officially have someone to keep you humble?" "Relieved, and a little scared." "Perfect. Love without a little fear is like coffee without caffeine. It looks real, but it won't keep you awake." They laughed and kept dancing, two hearts that had found their rhythm after a song that started a little off-key but ended in perfect harmony. 6 months later, a new sign was installed at the orphanage entrance: Mercer and Adams Community Home, where every child has a family. And on a light blue painted wall, a framed Polaroid showed a smiling couple surrounded by happy children, the ultimate proof that some love stories don't need an ending. They need an eternal beginning. So everyone, what did you think of this epic journey of Julian and Chloe? From the very first encounter with the black cards to the wedding with gourmet hot dogs and children as flower girls, this story had it all, didn't it? A millionaire CEO learning that love has no price, a brave housekeeper showing that dignity is worth more than money, villains getting what they deserved, and an ending that warms the heart. Share your thoughts in the comments. On a scale from 0 to 10, what rating would you give this story? I'd love to know your favorite moment. The black card test? The kitchen humiliation? The almost kiss at Pike Place? The epic press conference at the Space Needle? Or the marriage proposal with blue paint? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell to receive more touching stories like this one. See you in the next story.